Hey everybody. Oh no, it's Romania Black. I sound like if All For One has been smoking for 40 years. It's pretty bad. So basically, I have an upper respiratory infection and I'm losing my voice. But as this is coming out on Monday, I recorded on the weekends before, and so I'm basically at the point where I'm just recording and I can't stop. So we're going to call this the dark era, which seems fitting because My Hero Academia is kind of in the same boat right now. We're going to call this the dark era of Romania Black's reactions, where she has slight laryngitis from coughing and has slightly lost her voice. Otherwise, I'm fine. So I'm downing milk and tea to get my voice back, but I didn't want to skip this episode because it's so good and I'm so excited about it. It's basically Tartarus is the title of this episode. I pulled it up and was like, yes. So I'm very excited to see what this episode is about. I have no clue what the discussion is going to lead us to, but I didn't want to skip this episode, so I'm very sorry if my voice is the most annoying thing in the world. I just imagine Romania has become a different person for the reaction. We'll just go with that. And maybe I'll get my voice back. Hopefully by Monday I'll have my voice back if I don't use it that much. But I'm really excited to see what this episode entails. I know I sound like crud. I don't feel bad. My voice is just from coughing so much. But hopefully by Monday it is back to its normal candor and future reactions will be fine. It's just this one will be a little bit grimacy. But we'll see. We'll see what exactly happens. Y'all, maybe this episode will render me speechless and I won't have much to say. You know how that goes. So we're going to start episode 15 of My Hero Academia. We've been on a hiatus. I want to see the new episode. It's All For One thinks he's going to break out of jail. How are we going to do that? What are these characters in the OP? What's going on? I'm at the point in the manga where I really am excited, so I hope you all are too. But we're not going to waste any more time. We are going to dive right in and just see what happens. So we're going to start My Hero Academia episode 15 of season 6, and we're going to do that here in 3, 2, 1, and let's go. I'm going to be downing a lot of juice and milk during this discussion to try to get my voice up, but oh my gosh. Oh, I'm sorry my voice sounds so bad, but this episode was really good. It was really good, and honestly, it was really good and adapted well from the manga, from what I remember. Obviously, we'll have a little bit of a spoiler corner in this, but All For One is such a dork. He really is. Like, the whole parallel of, I've been wanting to talk about this for a long time, the whole parallel of DEKU being like, this is the story of how I became the greatest hero. And then you have All For One saying, this is the story of how I became the greatest demon lord. I'm like, who even uses demon lord as a terminology? He's like a D&D player from when he was a teenager. And he's just, I like this scenario that there's kind of almost like a Peter Pan vibe with All For One, where he's like never really grown up and he's still like trapped in this adolescence. Because the way that he views things, he just treats people like toys. He just does things for himself. He's very selfish. And everything is all just for his own personal gain. He doesn't seem to care about anyone or anything besides himself. And it's very frustrating for our heroes, right? And so it's so interesting to see All For One, like, say this proclamation he's going to become the ultimate demon lord. And we'll talk about Spinner. I really love Spinner's conversation throughout all of this. I was like, Spinner's getting down to the nitty gritty of him supporting Shigaraki, and I'm kind of all for it. But man, All For One, they do a really good job of setting up the prison break and just how high stakes it is, because there's so many prisoners that have so many powerful quirks, and it's like, oh my god, what do we do with these characters? And I love just the reference to like Dante's Inferno, where there's the different levels of hell. And of course, All for One's at the bottom. I get very much like Aizen Sama in Chair Sama vibes, because if you've watched Bleach, Aizen's at the bottom of Mugen. Like, he's at the very bottom there in his little chair, and here you have All for One in his little chair, and I feel like there's some correlation there. I feel like Horikoshi draws a little bit of inspiration from Kubo with that, because this would have came out after those chapters of Bleach, right? But I feel like with the one guy that's the guard of Tartarus, I feel like his commentary is very much diving to the center thesis of this series, which is the idea of, okay, how do we treat villains? And I feel like Todoroki makes a comment that kind of ties it all together perfectly, in that they are just humans, no different than the heroes. They're still people at the end of the day. Shoto makes the commentary that he's like, Dabi is me. I've harbored that same hatred that Dabi harbors towards Endeavor. He's like, I've harbored those same feelings. And he's like, I'm no different than Dabi. The thing is, I've realized and am changing myself, and Dabi is not. And so when the one manager of Tartarus is like, oh, they're monsters, they're less than human, they're different than us, I'm like, no, not really. They're still human. They're not monsters, but they've made choices that have put them in this position. But for him to say that they're less than human, I'm like, can we really say that? I don't know. But I find it's a fascinating commentary, right? And poor Spinner. Spinner's just looking at Shigaraki getting used by All for One. I feel like everybody drinks the All for One Kool-Aid except for Spinner of the League of Villains. Like, Dabi's like on his hands and knees, like prostrating before him. But Spinner's like, I'm not following you. I'm following Shigaraki because he's my bro. And I'm like, that's right. Everybody ships Shigaraki and Dabi together. I'm like, Shigaraki and Spinner's platonic friendship is like my best friend vibes. I like it so much. But yeah, God, I feel for Spinner in this one. We get some nice timestamps as we go through this episode. We get some nice timestamps going through as we go back and forth in time. I forgot about the brothers that were guarding Tartarus. I forgot completely about that storyline. Completely forgot about it. I was like, oh yeah. And then the one just dies on the spot. And we're like, what the hell? And then, yeah, the Nomus break in through Tartarus. And then All for One has been secretly plotting his Shakespearean revenge since the 80s. And goes through and basically manages to take advantage of the situation to open the doors up. Now, when they're having the conversation about the characters not being human, we see All for One, we see Kurogiri, then we see, you can't really tell, but I'm assuming that is Stain with his hands and knees and like that. I wanted to comment in the episode about it, but I didn't know if we'd get Stain's face, and I was like, I'm not going to say anything, but I'm pretty sure that's Stain. And then the one guy that's blonde there with his head against the wall, I'm pretty sure is Moonfish. I kept wanting to call him End, who's the one that uses like the paint lines, and he's the one that like hurt Natsu with Endeavor and the others, but no, it's Moonfish, and his head's up against the wall, right? And so, yeah, and they even tell the one guy, they're like, this is being recorded. Should you really be saying this about those prisoners? He's like, nobody cares, which is a big crux to the story. The idea that the problem is society doesn't care about these individuals, and that just, it doesn't, I like the message Horikoshi seems to be deriving here, that the hatred of these villains and the villains' hatred towards others, nobody is stepping in trying to help or reform the situation with the villains. It's just like, we'll just lock them up and forget about them. And is that a commentary of our prison system and our justice system? Probably. But I feel like Horikoshi's making a statement with that. And we've seen Deku be like, Shigaraki looked like someone that needed saving. So, And All for One establishes that no one came out to help Shigaraki, and that's why this hatred is festered. So I feel like it's setting up stuff with Deku and Shigaraki, and then the whole thing with Todoroki and Dabi, it's setting stuff up with them. It's just, we'll talk more about it in the spoiler corner. But yeah, Shigaraki comes in with the Nomu, and Shigaraki, I do feel bad for him, because he's like, this is my body. He's like, I wanted power to do what I wanted, but that didn't mean you were taking me over. And it becomes very clear in this episode, it becomes very clear that All for One is using Shigaraki to take over his body. Now, what that entails from this episode, we can infer that he wants to literally like transfer himself over to Shigaraki and take over his body. And Shigaraki would like become a vestige in essence, which is terrifying, right? It's also kind of the opposite of what was happening with Deku, because Deku has the vestiges of former users inside his body, but he's in control, and All for One wants to do the opposite, where Shigaraki and his victims are the vestiges, but he's still in control. So it's like exactly the opposite. It's very fascinating. Very fascinating indeed. Right? So yeah, and Shigaraki's trying to fight back, but he is not well rested. And All for One's like, you need to rest up, kid, and let me take over for a while so I can bust my wrinkly old prune self out of prison. Right? And then everything goes to hell in a handbasket. And then, I hate that. He's like, oh, Tomura, you're my precious. It's like, okay, Gollum, you're wrinkly like Gollum. You could pass for it. You're my precious next self. And we see like the hands like curling around him. Ugh. Very creepy imagery. And Shigaraki's just like having none of it. Right. So yeah, they bust through Tartarus, getting through, decaying everything. And All for One, to his credit, is very much a strategist, right? He's strategizing what to do and how to break in and get Shigaraki and get his body out with minimal damage to himself, right? And then everybody gets busted out of their cells because of the system error. And so it's like, is it Skeptic working to get them all out, or what's the situation? But regardless, they get out. We could probably assume that Skeptic is involved with it at some point. And so yeah, Muscular gets out. It's been so long since we've seen some of these villains, right? We see Muscular get out, and they're all trapped inside. We see Moonfish get out. Moonfish's deal is that Moonfish, like, he not only kills the guards, but he kills his own people, because Moonfish can't really control his ability. And that's saying something too. He can't control his power. And that's led him to be in this situation. And then we see Stain, and Stain has like the nose missing and the messed up face. But we see him there looking like, what do we do? And then we get some inside internal monologue from our purple-haired lady, whose hair looks like purple Laffy Taffy. I love her character design. It's amazing. And she says this world is beyond hope. And I feel like a lot of the villains have that same mentality, that the world is beyond hope, so we'll just take matters into our own hands. Which is an interesting thought process in comparison to the heroes, right? And so I like the idea that she frames herself in this moment. In this one moment, this woman frames herself as not being totally cold, heartless, and evil, because she hears banging on one of the doors and decides to let them out. She could have kept running, could have left them, but she doesn't. She helps them. And so she frames herself and opens up the door, and then we find out why the person inside couldn't open up the door and escape, because it's Overhaul, and Overhaul doesn't have any arms. Shigaraki got rid of his arms, so he's been banging. You can see it in the still frame. He's been banging his head up against the door, like killing them brain cells. Overhaul is killing those brain cells, and the first word out of his mouth is Pops. All he can think of is his grandfather. That's all he wants. That's all he wants. Kai Chisaki. Overhaul. It's like, damn. And so then we have a prison break, and Shigaraki is like standing up there with All For One. I love that All For One has brought his cape, but he also has like his entire medical equipment with him. He's just like brings the whole thing, and the two bodies standing next to one another as he's like, I'll lead you guys out and we'll start a glorious revolution, right? And then he uses his quirk to control the one pilot to escape. So yeah, they basically get all these prisons to slowly break out one by one. And for All For One, it's really for two reasons. One, he wants quirks to control, but two, he wants to create chaos, right? He needs people with strong quirks that he can take and use whenever he wants to, and he needs to create chaos and further dissent within hero society. So, it's a fun time. But I love this moment where Spinner stands up to him. Spinner is like, because All For One's like, I need you to watch Shigaraki's body while I rest, right? And Dabi seems like all for it, and Skeptic's kind of like, well, I don't really have a choice in the matter. But for Spinner to stand up to All For One, this guy that could like kill him in an instant, like the balls on Spinner. I love it. I love how ballsy Spinner is. And he's like, no. He's like, I followed Shigaraki because I connected with him and he gave me purpose beyond the original motivation that Stain gave me. He's like, I don't follow you. Who are you? Like, I love that. I love that Spinner of all characters, like, is the only one that like trash talks All For One, and All For One just kind of deals with it. He's like, I kind of need you, so. And he's like, I have the same dreams as Shigaraki. And so we're going to make all of our dreams come true once his body's completely rested and he's fulfilled his completion, right? Oh my God, to take over All For One and reign over the world. Like, that's All For One's goal. He just wants to take back his brother's quirk and reign over the world. And that's pretty much it. So, yeah, then we have Bakugou waking up. Oh my God, Bakugou. I love that everyone is just like, Invisible Girl's so happy to see him. And then, oh God, grape juice. He's like, Minato is just like so happy. And Bakugou's like, where is everybody? And they're at Central Hospital. And the thing of it is, Bakugou in this episode is, even though as he's pushing Mineta back with his hand, it's ridiculous. I love that he's very soft in this episode. Even when he's saying, if he dies, I'll kill him. Bakugou being soft up until the end and asking, like, where's Deku? Of course, he asks for Deku first. Where's Deku? Where's Todoroki? Where's Aizawa? The upperclassmen, Endeavor. He's like, what happened? Like, he looks so soft there. And I love that they're all like, okay, we're going to tell you, but you have to stay calm. And it's like telling Bakugou to stay calm. It's like telling a feral cat to go take a bath. Like, what do you think was going to happen? You know? And then, of course, we get Gran Torino reminiscing about Nana and about how their plan backfired and he feels for Shimura. God, my ship lives on. Good to know. Good to know. Speaking of ships living on, we need to talk about Present Mike and Aizawa, because it's one thing seeing it in the manga, but seeing it here in the episode where Aizawa is just like missing a leg, missing an eye, looking like horrible. It's so sad. And seeing Present Mike with his bun and his casual clothes coming to see his friend. Like, I ship Present Mike and Aizawa so much, and seeing them together like this is just like, my dudes. It's so sad. And Present Mike is like, nobody is thinking well of us on the outside. He's like, we've got all these prisons break. And he's like, nothing looks good. The jailbreaks are happening all over the place. And the society and the public's letting us have it. And then he's like, and I love that he grips his fist there. He's like, we did what we were supposed to. We did it with everything we had. We fought with our lives on the line. And this is the result. Even Kayama. And Kayama is Midnight's name. Like, if you read Vigilantes, you find out that Kayama and Aizawa and President Mike, they all went to school together. And so they all have, like, very close affections towards one another. And Kayama's, like, their big sister. And so, him saying even Kayama, why? And I love that Aizawa's like, don't say it, Yamada. It's like, my heart. These two. Aizawa's like, I don't want to think about it. I just want to know if my students are safe. More importantly, what about the students? This man's lost an eye and a leg. His best friend, he's lost two of his best friends, and his other best friend is limiting in front of him, and he still has the balls to ask, more importantly, how are the students? A teacher among teachers, Aizawa. I love him so much. And then, yeah, they're all just worried the public is just having a field day. I like the one sign that them said tax thief. I was like, of all things to complain about Endeavor, tax evasion? Really? That's where you went? Okay. And I love that you have the ones that were with Midnight. Here's the boarding Shoto. You have Kirishima, Mina, and you have Momo, and then Seto there as well. We know what you're really like, Todoroki. It's okay. And I forgot that Todoroki can't talk. Like, his throat's been burned, so he can't say anything. And them trying to question, like, Rei and Natsu and Fuyumi. I'm like, get away from them. Like, they don't deserve any of this. Like, they didn't ask for this. And Endeavor, he's not aware of the disastrous state of Japan right now because he's in surgery, right? And they want to know the relationship between Endeavor and Dabi. Will Endeavor have a press conference? And then I love this moment where Shoto has like a moment thinking back and remembering that villain that said that the Endeavor was darkness. The light that he gives off casts a shadow, bringing darkness and demise. And Shoto, he says, I'm basically what Dabi was. He's like, I couldn't beat Dabi's firepower. It's stronger than my father's. And then he says they were strong flames of hatred. He's been watching this whole time just to make the old man fall, destroying his own body and getting other people's lives involved. And that's when Shoto says, he's me. He's like, back in season 1 and season 2, he's like, I was getting other people involved. I was just sitting there watching Endeavor, not talking to him, planning his downfall, destroying my body so I could do it. He's like, he's no different than I was. It's basically until he met Midorima, he was the same way, right? And he kind of laments doing that. And he realizes that if anybody's going to stop Dabi, it's going to be Toya. It's going to be Shoto. It's like... And then, of course, Fuyumi and Natsu show up to see him. And then we cut back to Bakugou, who is just crawling towards where Deku's at because he finds out Deku's in a coma. Now, we all know Deku's not going to stay in that damn coma. We know that. But for right now, he's passed out. Right? And I just love Bakugou being like, if he dies, I'll kill him. I'm like, oh my god. One of the most classic Bakugou lines. Freaking love it. So yeah, I do have some spoilers I want to talk about, but this episode was great. I loved it. It was a wonderful jailbreak episode, setting some cool things up with Spinner and with Shigaraki and All for One, setting stuff up with Bakugou, with Shoto, and then Deku's passed out. So again, I'm very sorry that I had a very raspy voice. I'm going to try to let my voice rest between reactions and hopefully gain it back as quickly as possible. But I've had all this drainage and stuff and coughing, and it's just made me but I couldn't wait. I was like, I had to react. So I hope you all enjoyed this. If you're not sticking around from the spoil corner, I hope you all enjoyed this and have a wonderful week. Please stay safe, take care, and I'll be back with more episodes of My Hero Academia. Yeah, so it's hard talking about these episodes without bringing up specific characters. Like, it's hard to not say Lady Nagant without bringing up Lady Nagant. It's hard to talk about her, so I'm like, oh my god, I want to bring her up so badly, but I'm like, I can't. And so this episode was pretty good. I really, really liked it. It was a good adaptation from the manga. Overhaul being back, Stain being there, it's great. I'm excited to see how they portray Overhaul in these reactions. But yeah, Lady Nagant getting the tiny brief glimpses that she was a hero, right? Getting the glimpses of that because of how she acts despite everything, right? That's wonderful. I like that a lot. And then, of course, All for One being freaking hammy. It's so weird now with where we're at in the manga because you have all these things that are being set up, and there's like a bird attacking my window. But you have all these things being set up with Spinner. I'm excited for Spinner and All for One's interactions. I thought they were some of the best parts of this arc because Spinner does not put up with All for One's shit. He gives him so much grief. And I'm like, yes, I'm ready for Spinner supremacy for this part of the manga. But yeah, All for One, just what the hell, like him trying to take over Shigaraki and all the stuff that's being set up like later with All for One fighting Endeavor. It's going to be ridiculous. But not only getting that, but just the idea of setting up the idea that villains need saving as well. And that Deku is going to be set up to have that revelation probably in the next episode, right? Probably in the next episode, he's going to have that revelation with the vestiges about wanting to save Shigaraki. And I'm really excited for that, right? But just Bakugou being the first one. At this point in the series, it was hinted at back in season 3 that Bakugou had some feelings maybe for Deku, whether you want to say they're friendly feelings or not. But I think by this point, the fact that Deku's the first person Bakugou thinks of and he's after him, it's like Bakugou wants to keep Deku safe and wants him to be alright. And I'm like, my shipper heart is like, even though I do ship Bakugou and Kirishima, I do ship Bakugou and Deku as well. So I'm like, I'm all about it. But there's lots of little things set up in these episodes that are going to come back for spoilers later. Like with Shoto saying he needs to fight Dabi. And then there we are in the manga. Even though Dabi's kind of like, peace out, I'm going to go fight Endeavor. I am excited over these next few episodes for several things. For Deku's visions with the vestiges, for Dabi versus Shoto, for Rei like snapping Endeavor out of things, for Lady Nagant's debut, for her and Overhaul's interactions, for Spinner and All for One, for I don't think we'll get the Stars and Stripes this season, but I am excited for all the classmates of 1A to go at Deku and give him a talking to. So yeah, there's a lot in this episode that was great. I'm going to let my voice rest. I'm very curious to talk spoilers with y'all down below and comments about the episode in general. So again, I'm very sorry about my voice. I hope it wasn't too annoying, but hopefully by next week it will be back to full force. So in any case, I hope you all have a wonderful week. Please stay safe, take care, and I will talk to you all next week with more My Hero Academia.